Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be telling you all about the books that I read in the month of January 2025. I took a break out of my very busy depression bed writing schedule to come and talk to you about these books. Hopefully I can stay upbeat long enough for me to get through the books that I'm talking to you about. January has just not been the best month. Reading wise, it was very middle of the road. I've definitely had worse reading months, but it wasn't a very polarizing one. It was just very meh. A lot of the books didn't stand out to me, but I did have one gem I can talk to you about. I read 22 books in the month of January, 7 of which we're going to chat about. The other books I read for videos and we've already chatted about them, and I don't like to be repetitive if I don't have to be, unless it's something really juicy, but again, not much juicy this month. First up, let's talk about Banana Pants by Penny Reid. What a name, what a title for a romance novel. I have mixed luck with Penny Reid books. For the most part, I really like her storytelling. I think she does a really good job with characterization, and I really appreciate her for what she does for the romance community. If you don't know, Penny does this thing where she allows authors to write in her universe, which is a way to get more notoriety and popularity for those authors associated with Penny Reid, who is a fairly successful, fairly well-known author. Additionally, she has free resources on her website. It sounds like I'm trying to plug her. I promise we have no connection. She has no idea who I am. She has free resources on her website though for fellow authors on how to, plot a novel and how to get your characterization as amazing as hers. And I really enjoyed her Winston Brothers series. I thought it was a lot of fun. I haven't had the best luck with her Knitting in the City series or her last book. I can't remember what it was called, but it seemed to have a similar cover. It seemed to have a similar vibe, and it was so goofy, but I was kind of giggling and kicking my feet at the same time. I wish I could remember it. I'll put a picture of it right here. I decided to pick up Banana Pants, and I kind of wish that I hadn't, to be honest with you. This book is about our two main characters, Ava and Des. Ava is a tax attorney, and at the start of the story, she's going to this rich people gala in lieu of her friend, or in place of her friend. Her friend's like, hey, go pretend to be me, and our heroine takes the opportunity to get in a wig and have some fun, and kind of a weird way to start a book, and she ends up running into a guy that she knew growing up, one of her childhood best friends, who she's always had a crush on, Des. And Des is also posing as someone different at this particular event, and this is kind of the way in which they reconnect, but it's not a fun reconnection moment. Ava has a lot of pent-up frustration because Des kind of left Ava's life unceremoniously. He kind of abandoned her, and he was dealing with some pretty severe mental health issues. He has bipolar disorder and was having, I don't even know if it was a manic or depressive episode, but anyway, he was hospitalized for that, and then he just never came back. He never really let Ava know how he was doing, so she holds a lot of resentment towards him, and he's trying to stay away from her, but he can't really help himself, and the book was just so fucking chaotic. I wanted to enjoy it, but it was one of those books where you kind of feel like you're thrown in. It feels like I picked up the fifth book in a series, and I was expected to know what places these people were talking about, what side characters were being talked about, and I think, if I am remembering correctly, after reading some Goodreads reviews, because it's not in the description of this book, this might have an association with Knitting in the City, these characters might be kids of the characters in Knitting in the City, but regardless, I shouldn't have to be confused going into a novel. I shouldn't have to be wait, who are these people? Am I supposed to know? Am I supposed to care? I think Penny did a pretty good job at manufacturing the irritation that Ava was experiencing, getting us to care, be invested in the fact that her best friend, the person she confided in, left her. But at the same time, I don't know that the book really went in any direction at all. Yes, these characters fuck. Yes, the sexual chemistry was there. Yes, the individual characters were pretty good. Not much happened. It was a chaotic book. There was a plot line. The plot line was chaotic, but yet it never felt like anything had stakes. It never felt like anything truly paid off. It's just such a weird one. It's hard to really talk about. I think you have to read this book to truly get what I'm saying. It's fucking weird. It's a weird ass book. I'm gonna say something potentially controversial here. Not even potentially controversial. I've been picking up a lot of books lately with mental health representation, and I love mental health representation in romance. I think it's important because mental health clearly affects every aspect of life, and especially, I think, romance. I think our author set out to write a character with bipolar, and she kind of, I want to say overwrote Des because of it, but there was so much emphasis on his bipolar. And as someone who has mental health issues, it definitely affects my life, right? It's definitely something that affects my everyday and affects how I interact with others. It seemed like in every chapter we were getting these long, in-depth explanations about bipolar disorder and not seeing it through the eyes of Des, if that makes sense. It was hey, I'm gonna try to make this as accurate and as well thought out and as therapist approved as I can, not really accounting for personal experience. It felt very textbook definition of bipolar rather than this is this one person's individual experience with this disorder. This is how it's affecting their relationships. I don't know. I was not impressed with it. Not saying it was offensive in any way. It wasn't bad representation. It was just so much, and it also took up so much of the book. That sounds like I'm bitching about mental health representation in books. I'm really not. I think it should be there. Maybe just consider the ways in which you're including it, especially for someone who doesn't have that disorder. And I don't know if Penny has bipolar disorder. I want to say that I was reading a Goodreads review and someone was saying, oh, she wrote this because she knows someone with bipolar disorder and wanted to write that representation. And respect, it wasn't bad. It was just way too much. It was like a lot. It was a lot, okay? Hopefully that doesn't piss anybody off. I'm sure it will. Next, let's talk about The Beast Takes a Bride by Julianne Long. This one I picked up on my own accord. Same with Banana Pants. I picked up a couple of books just for fun, like not for videos, not for any like future projects. Some of these books are for future projects. This one I picked up just because I heard, I think Crystal from Crystal's Bookish Life talk about it as like one of her favorite books of the year, and I trust Crystal. She always has kick-ass recommendations from authors that I've never read from before. This one's about Alexandra and Magnus, and at the start of the story, or even before the start of the story, Magnus basically like pays to marry Alexandra. He sees her and he's like, she is beautiful. Her family is in kind of a shitty situation. I am a guy who came from nothing but is very wealthy, and I think she might have like a title, but I guess it wouldn't pass to him, right? Anyway, regardless, she could use the money. Her family could use the money. Her dad agrees to this marriage on her behalf, and she is happy to do it. She's like, okay, fine, whatever, even though she's like not really close with this man. She ends up married to him, and even before their wedding takes place, he sees her interacting with a like childhood crush, and it kind of incenses Magnus. He feels very betrayed, even though it's very clear why this woman's marrying you. It's not because like she's in love with you. They'll have barely interacted, but he takes this to heart, and they separate for multiple years until they have to like come back into each other's lives, pretend to like love each other. And there was a lot that I really enjoyed about this book. The thing that I love about Julianne Long's historical romances is the nuance that she includes in her characterization. Characters are huge for me. I feel like that's pretty evident if you listen to me talk about books. I need a character to feel really well realized. I want them to have idiosyncrasies. I want them to feel like real people. I don't want a super archetypical like wallflower type, right? And Alexandra, a character who definitely has her own unique personality, her own thoughts and opinions, and so does Magnus. Like they both have insecurities that come into their relationship and kind of prevent them from communicating effectively at the beginning of the story. But as the book carries on, of course, they end up kind of reconciling and starting to understand each other on a more intimate level, because again, they never really, I don't even think they consummated their relationship when they first got together. So this one was fun because it was like two characters getting to really explore each other. And this is actually like a micro trope that I kind of love in romance, historical romance specifically, is this idea of characters getting married, becoming estranged almost immediately, and then having to come back together like under certain circumstances later on. I've read it in a couple of books and it works for me almost every time. I think it's like an interesting way to sort of, I don't want to say titillate, but like show us, ooh, these two like used to have something going on, but not enough. Like they didn't know each other super well. It's like kind of a second chance, but like kind of not at the same time. I like it. I think it's fun. I liked this book. I give it 3 stars. I think the ending wasn't perfect for me. I feel like our hero, I wouldn't say he messed up, but his reason for, you know, kind of abandoning Alexandra in the first place was kind of suspect, and I feel like he could have done more groveling. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I've also read a lot of books by this author at this point. Not a lot, maybe like 4. It wasn't like my most favorite by her, so I knew I had to give it like 3 stars rather than 4 or 5, but still very solid. Still definitely a good time. Would recommend it. A book that I wouldn't recommend, another historical romance. I read a lot of fucking historicals, which is not super out of character for me, but like I don't normally read at this volume for like one given month. Anyway, Never Below a Kiss by Lindsay Lovice is a book that I read for a video over on Patreon where I examined Amazon's best romances of 2024. I like to look at that list because it tends to be a little more curated than something like the Goodreads nominee list. We have an editor who like goes in and looks at the new releases and decides what books we should be reading, and I think that's a little bit more compelling than just like books based off sheer popularity. So I tried to pick a handful of books from that list that didn't overlap with the Goodreads nominees, books that I'd never really heard of or sounded interesting to me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna read these and we'll compare if Goodreads or Amazon's better. Spoiler, Goodreads, wow, by a mile. But Never Below a Kiss is about our main characters, Emily and Zach. Emily, at the start of the story, is a governess for a family, and she's trying to keep her past under wraps, her identity kind of under wraps. She grew up very, very poor. She is not a part of the ton, but she is working amongst them. And if you know anything about like historical romances, governesses tend to come from families. They're usually women who like, I don't want to say can't get married, but like maybe didn't get married. Our heroine comes from a lower class and she has worked her way up, and she's kind of pretending to be someone she's not, okay? She ends up getting approached by a woman who is heading up a secret society of governess spies. She's like, hey, I can use your skills of deception, because she knows, of course, that Emily like has skills of deception. She's like, I can use your skills of deception. You need to infiltrate the Ton for me, and you could help give me like information that I need that we can feed to the police, because it's like for the police, I guess. And Zach, I think, works for the police. Emily and Zach come into contact with each other in a ballroom. He is just enamored with her. She blows him a kiss. He's like, oh, this bitch is hot. I need to get up on it. And that's really what this book is. The plotline disappears. The governess aspect doesn't fucking matter. And it's just a sort of insipid, lust-forward historical that I just like couldn't get on board with. I love the idea of espionage in romance. I really enjoyed Isabel and the Rogue because I feel like it did this idea of spies very well. Both the hero and heroine were kind of spying for different governments, and they had to come together, and it was just really hot, but like not carnal. I mean, did fuck, okay, but it wasn't like super lust-forward. This book, they want to fuck from the beginning, and they kind of do. And our heroine, it's like she does have a hard past. She is trying to escape her ex-husband, who is presumed dead, but of course isn't really dead. So I guess there was some explanation for the fact that these two were bumping uglies like all of the time. Like, she was finding a new way to experience intimacy because her husband was abusive and kind of a piece of shit. And so she's like finding, you know, new relationships somewhere else, blah, blah, blah. And of course the ex like comes back to haunt her, and I don't know, it was just silly. It wasn't good. I didn't like it, and I'm disappointed by that because the reviews for this book are really good, and I don't get it. Another book that I wasn't like a huge fan of, but I didn't hate, was Between Friends and Lovers. This book is about Joe, Ezra, and Malcolm. Joe and Ezra have been best friends since university days, I believe, and he is really handsome. He is now a teen, like, star, I guess. He's not a teen. He like is in teen like CW type shows. He's very famous. Joe is a medical doctor turned influencer, and again, these two have been friends for a very long time, and Joe has been harboring a huge crush on Ezra for forever. He always talks about how they're soulmates and they are like meant to be together forever. There is never any implied romance involved, and Joe finally plucks up courage at the very start of this book to express her feelings for Ezra, or at least try to express those feelings, after he ends up bringing her high school nemesis slash bully to a party that they're both attending. She's like, what the fuck, dude? She finally like plucks up the courage. She's like, do you know that I have been here this entire time and I've liked you this entire time? And he is kind of like shell-shocked by this, doesn't express the same admiration and romantic intentions, I guess, as Joe. At this same party, after she expresses her feelings to Ezra, they're not reciprocated. She ends up meeting Malcolm, running into this guy that she's never met who's really handsome and really into her. From the jump, the romance here is between Malcolm and Joe. However, Ezra pops his little ugly fucking head up every time these two end up getting close. And by these two, I mean Joe and Malcolm. Malcolm, I don't remember his profession. Oh, he's an author, I think. He is an author of like romance novels, which is cool and fun. The romance itself is really about these two learning more about each other, about breaking down boundaries and walls between each other. Joe has a rough relationship with her mom that comes into play in the book. One of those romances that feels very real in that the characters feel real, the experiences they're having are real. Caveat here, I like a little bit of fun in my romance, and I'm not saying that romance like has to be fun, that it can't be serious, that it can't have hard-hitting topics, but I need something to keep me interested, to like keep me wanting to read. And the only thing that kept popping up was Joe's reluctance to enter into a long-term relationship, and Ezra eventually expressing some, you know, romantic desires towards Joe. Never really felt like the stakes were very high, the tension was there, even though these two seemed to be well suited. It was like someone was telling me a story about two people they know getting into a relationship together. If you took Ezra out of the equation, there would be no reason for this to be a story. And that being said, I would have appreciated if Ezra wasn't there and we had a different conflict in this book. So it's tough when you like characters and you appreciate certain things that an author does, but like the whole picture just doesn't really work for you because it makes me feel too nitpicky. But that's who I am, I suppose. Okay, I gave this book 3 stars. It's fine. It's just, it wasn't like perfect for me. Another book with the same story. I promise the last 2 are actually like books I liked. You Should Be So Lucky by Cat Sebastian. This was the last book that I read for that Amazon video. Thank the Lord. This one is about Mark and Eddie, and it is set in the 1960s amongst a baseball backdrop. And I'm really finding out this month that I don't give a fuck about baseball. I just don't. I don't like it. It's not a sport that I connect with. And this is one, again, where there were certain elements that I really appreciated, but the overall picture just wasn't something I was into. So Eddie is our baseball player. He is not a rookie, I don't think, but he is on a new team and he is getting a lot of notoriety, a lot of fame, but also he's been pretty bad lately. Like, he's not very good at his job. And Mark is assigned to Eddie to cover his baseball season, okay? Mark is a journalist who normally covers the arts section. He has no interest in covering baseball or sports in general. He's assigned this, and him and Eddie get really close. Mark also has some baggage where he had a partner who passed away and also was not very public with their relationship, which makes sense considering that it's the 1960s and people were wildly homophobic, but also Mark wanted their relationship to be a little bit more well-known, at least to the people in their lives. Like, I think Mark has a pair of lesbians as friends, and they're together and they're happy, and he just like wanted domestic bliss and also to be able to share their relationship with the people he's close with, I guess. And he didn't get that, and so he is a little jaded and he doesn't want to be in a relationship like that again. But obviously the tricky situation is that Eddie is a baseball player. If anyone found out that he was gay, things would not be good for him, right? Like, things are not good for gay athletes now. They definitely weren't great back in the 1960s. So while he's attracted to Mark, he's kind of reluctant to super enter into a relationship at the beginning, but then he's like, you know what, I actually really like this guy after we started fucking. Mark's very reluctant and like holds him at arm's length. Here's the thing. I don't like baseball, which, you know, strike against me, I guess. Strike. The thing that was not really working for me and not really connecting, besides the baseball aspect of the story, despite the chemistry between the characters, despite the really good characterization and the slow burn nature of this romance, I don't feel like these two were well suited for each other. I think that they were looking for very different things in relationships. I think that Mark was holding Eddie at way too far a distance. I think that Eddie wanted to like dive deep, even though he knew that this relationship was risky. I think that he really put his heart out on the table and he was like, hey, this is what I want. This is like what I'm looking for. And even though like they kind of come to an agreement and they enter into this relationship, it just didn't seem like Mark really liked Eddie all that much. And that's not what I want to feel when I'm reading a romance. The snarky comments Mark was making, I know a lot of people would view as just like, oh, that's his personality, it's quirky. And like, there's another book that I'm going to talk about where like that's kind of a similar situation. The character still has snark even when they're with their significant other. Just the execution. Like it's all about how it's written. It's all about the vibe and the mood that you're getting from the characters. And this one just like, maybe it felt realistic. Maybe the characters were great. I didn't connect with the romance, and that's the important part of romance. So yeah, this was a like 2, maybe 3-star read for me. Let's talk about 2 books I liked, shall we? Let's cap off the video with some shit that I liked. First, let's talk about Earl Crush by Alexandra Vasti. This is for a future project. I picked this one up because I got it from Libro FM, I believe. Their February selections are gas. I have access to Deep End already by Ellie Hazelwood, and also whatever Tessa Bailey's new book is that I'm really excited about. Of course, I can't remember the name of the book. So excited. Next month, we're gonna have a good wrap up. I swear to God. This book, I would say more elements landed for me, which I was happy with. So this one's about Lydia and Arthur. Lydia has been writing to who she thinks is Arthur for 3 years. What we're supposed to think, what we're supposed to believe, or this is what Lydia has believed, is that her seditious pamphlet that she has been writing for a while was picked up by a gentleman who happens to be an earl in Scotland, and he has been writing to her and expressing his desire for her, and she has been expressing that desire back. They've been sharing intimate thoughts and stories and kinds of stuff, whatever, for the past like 3 years. She figures that since our hero's financial situation shitty and hers is not, he will offer up her money, kind of, or like provide money, and he will provide a title in return, right? Like they'll get married, it'll all be great. So anyway, she shows up at this man's castle. Lo and behold, the man doesn't know who the fuck she is. Arthur is like, who is this lady? I've not been writing to. I don't know who you are. They quickly figure out though, Lydia and Arthur, that Arthur's little brother Davis has been writing to Lydia and posing as Arthur, like sharing some things about Arthur in the writings, but also, you know, embellishing and or like making things up and or just telling tall tales, I guess. This actually provides the perfect opportunity though for Arthur to find his brother. His brother has been kind of missing for a little while. He has not had contact with his flighty brother in a long time, and since our heroine has been writing to him, ostensibly she has some knowledge about him and can help Arthur find his brother. Kind of a stretch, I feel like, but the brother has taken one of Arthur's inventions, which is like a pretty deadly invention. Arthur doesn't know how this is going to be used, so it's imperative anyway that these two find Davis. So they go out on an adventure together. There are shared bedrooms, there are, I think, shared beds, and it was fun. It was a fun time. I think that the plot was maybe a little too complex at times. I think the page length needed to be quite as long. I don't want to say that this book could have been dumbed down. I just think there were some elements, some double crosses, some situations in which I was like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? Like in an unnecessary way, especially as the end of the book neared. Found out more about Davis's intentions and run-ins with the law, kind of. I don't know. I think that there were some elements of this book that like didn't need to be quite as complex as they were. That being said, I liked the romance here. I thought it was fun. I also liked the inclusion of these like letters that Arthur is writing to Lydia, but like not sending to her. There's a lot of sweet stuff here. I liked the original plot line, even if it was a little bit much at times. And I think if you're someone who really likes Evie Dunmore or some of the more, I don't want to say contemporary historical romance authors, but like, you know the type. Like if you like an India Holton, if you like an Evie Dunmore, I think like you would really fuck with this book. It was a fun time. So glad I read that. I think I would give it like 3 stars. A book that I was like between 4 and 5 stars on, but I'm landing on 5 stars. It surprised me. It definitely took me by surprise. Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. I think I put this on my most anticipated list of the year, but I didn't fully expect this to be a 5-star, even though I've loved other books in the Rome, Kentucky series. I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. This was a really, really fun contemporary enemies to lovers story. Had banter that I wasn't expecting from this author, frankly. I didn't know if she was capable of it, but she sure delivered. So Emily and Jack are 2nd grade teachers. They have been at odds for a very long time. They ended up meeting their freshman year of college, and Emily is fresh off of a breakup, kind of like right before her first day of school, and Jack ends up running into her with a full cup of coffee, getting it all down her shirt before they go into their first lecture together. And she is just not in the mood. She's pissed off, and this this just sets off their nemesis adventure. Are in a lot of classes together because they're the same major and they're just constantly at odds. They've had to do group projects together and they bicker the entire time. Now that they are full-grown adults, now that they're in their 30s, Jack has recently moved back to Rome, Kentucky, worked there for like 3 years, moved to Nebraska to be with his fiance, moved back after the fiance situation didn't work out. He's back in Kentucky. He has purchased a home right next to our heroine, and they're gonna have to work on their nemesis relationship. It's just such a fun book. I think that if you're looking for a book that is equal parts fun and emotional, I think that you would do well to pick this up. And I don't want to compare this to Emily Henry because Emily Henry goes beyond with her like emotions and shit. This book really surprised me with the level of depth it had. Like I think if you read the cheat sheet and you read this, you would not think they were written by the same author. And that's not a dig at the cheat sheet because I fucking love that book. But this book really did have some deeper emotions. I think what's giving this book 5 stars for me, and not 4. Characters though. The characters really blew me away. They felt very 3-dimensional. I think often we are given 2 options for female main characters, right? Like we're normally given the wallflower, the shy girl, the woman who never stands up for herself, or we're given the total bitch. She's totally closed off. She doesn't need anyone. And I liked our heroine because she was kind of a blend of both. She's an eldest sister, definitely wants to people please, and she wants to make everybody in her life happy and make sure everybody's taken care of. But she also stands up for herself. She doesn't let herself get steamrolled. She just has a lot of like prickly bits, but she's just so real. I really liked Emily's character. And then Jack, I love the way that he's described as this like perfect specimen. He is so charming to everybody, but like not charming to Emily, like not very nice to Emily. He has his own baggage. I don't want to like spoil too much of it, but he has his own situation going on. Another thing that I loved that like made this book 5 stars, not 4, was the publishing situation. So our heroine writes a romance novel within this book and she wants to get it published, but she's not really sure if it's like good enough or ready. And our hero has experience with publishing. He helps her with that. And for some reason, I think this is like the only situation where I have really enjoyed that in a book. I don't really like books about books. I've made that pretty evident. But for some reason, if it is about like 2 authors or 2 people in publishing working together and like helping critique each other, I find it kind of hot. And in this situation, we have a heroine who writes a romance novel and then she has this guy who has more like experience with publishing and writing, helping her edit it, and you actually get to see it on page. Another situation, like I can't remember what book it was, but I read something similar to this and it never actually happened on page. It was like, oh, he's gonna help me with my book, and then he does, but we don't get to see it. This you get to see, and there's like some acting out of spicy moments from that book in this. So fun. It's just a fun book. It's a fun book. Point blank. If you're looking for something fun and you need a reprieve from the timeline that we are living in, mayhaps pick this one up. Mayhaps pick this one up. I had so much fun with this. I am very free with my 3, 2, and 1 star ratings. I've decided I need to be more free with my 5 stars as well. 7 books that I read in the month of January out of the 22 that I read this month. I'm hoping that I can pick up the pace a little bit come February. I think I'm like 3 or 4 books behind schedule according to Goodreads for my reading challenge. And I'm trying to stay on top of it, frankly. Like I'm trying to hit my 300 books for the first time ever. I'm not like woefully behind. I'm sure I can catch up, but you know, I'm just praying that the depression lifts a little bit and then I'm able to read some good stuff and tell you about it. Next month really is going to be fun. I guess this month technically. I think you're seeing this on like February 2nd, but I've got some juicy videos coming. I think I have 2 bigger list videos and then 2 vloggy videos, and one of those vloggy videos we're going to be reading Deep End. I've been waiting for this and I fucking need this. I think y'all do too. I think y'all do too. So anyway, thanks for watching this. I really do love y'all so much. I'm excited to see what the year ahead brings us. I'll see you in the next one.